Good morning, everyone. This is John Haller. I'm here with my sidekick now, I guess official sidekick, a good buddy, Mark Sutherland from the UK, who is, I don't know, are you celebrating England's win in the World Cup yesterday?
I haven't. I have to confess that I've completely ignored the World Cup. Really, I've had too many other things to go on. Maybe I'm the only male within the UK that's sort of ignored it.
Well, we'll get your card. We'll get your man card back here later today. You'll be able to earn your man card back today with the comments that you make. So this is John Haller, Mark Sutherland, and I'm doing a live prophecy update. Just a quick update for me on some sort of, and if somebody would just give me a thumbs up in the chat that you can hear what's going on, that would be helpful. But I'm still home recovering. I have about, not that I'm counting, but it's approximately 25 days and 3 hours until I get my cast off so I can actually get in a boot and maybe walk around a little bit. It makes it a challenge. So my updates are being done from my dining room because I don't feel safe navigating a rather long staircase down to the lower level in our home where my office and all my extra monitors are. So this is extremely frustrating for me to deal with. I think I've left the house once in about 24 days. No, it's not even been 24 days, in about 18 days. So that's pretty unusual for me. So just pray for us and we'll get through that, and pray for Pam as she's acting as a caregiver. So Mark and I were chatting this morning on WhatsApp, exchanging messages. This is an incredible time. A friend sort of jokingly sent me a text this morning that said, wow, everything that you prepared for your update today is now a Stone Age relic of the past because things have changed. So I'm not sure where to begin. So let's start with sort of political advice. So when we look at these things in the end times, we know that these things in the end times will unfold in a real geopolitical context. I'm going to try to move my camera a little bit further away from me. So me and high definition don't really get along that well anymore at my age. So so the prophecies of the end times will unfold in a real geopolitical, a real world context. So we have a lot of passages that we look at. We look at things about false teachings and that type of thing. And I think, Mark, maybe now's a good time. You're working on a documentary about, I think, the transgender issue. Can you give us a little information on that?
Yes, I can. And working with my dear friend Melanie Kreitz-Packard, and you very kindly had us both on a few weeks ago to discuss that, and I asked people to go and look up that interview. We did 24 interviews in America, and now I'm gearing up to do interviews on this side of the pond. And to say that you very kindly said a very I think a very important point a number of weeks ago, where when you were informing people about this, and then people were pushing back and saying, why are you discussing this issue? And you turned around and said, well, I feel that it is an issue we need to talk about. And actually it's an issue that begins even more to define where we are in regard to the end times, and in regard to geopolitically, but also when we're looking at principalities and powers and redefining male, female. And we are made in God's image, and this whole discussion of sex, gender, and what we seem to be encouraging within young people. So it's awful. We seem to be the petri dish of everything that seems to be going on at the moment. There are huge discussions about this on this side of the pond. And frankly, it seems to have unleashed, in my humble opinion, not that this will be well liked by various people, a heck of a lot of mental illness, and it's extremely sad. And I would say that it's abuse of young people. I mean, our documentary is then working out how we actually got here, and of course, Melanie is a urologist and an expert in pelvic construction as a surgeon. So hence why then pitching this whole idea, John. But the fact that, just very quickly, that over the last few years, including Keir Starmer, who's still just about the prime minister of this country before he steps down. When that's going to happen, I don't know. Whether that's going to be in the next few days, who knows? But the fact that when asked a question, but when he was leader of the Labour Party before he becomes prime minister, can women have a penis? And the fact that he has to think about that, along with other politicians, and of course on both sides of the pond as well. But this is the kind of madness that we have reached. But also just pushing this on young people and undermining family, asking parents to take responsibility. But also when we look at the whole thing of the drugs that are pushed on young people. And before anyone says, well, Mark, what do you know about this? Well, I know quite a lot about this on a personal level, unfortunately. But also, I'll be honest and say, over the last number of months, and many things that I've learned, so I'm new to that space. So just quickly, the website is imageunshaken.com, imageunshaken.com. It's built, it's going to expand. There's interviews and stuff to put on there. And if anyone feels minded to make a donation there, then please do. It's a huge undertaking. It's not just going to be one documentary. This is going to be episodic. But we do have, just quickly, we've already, interviewed. We've got links with Canada, of course, America, links with the UK, links with New Zealand, and it will expand. And particularly if people are very much paying attention to this debate. And I just encourage dear friends in America, you cannot just rely on the executive branch on this issue. It's about engaging at the federal level on this issue and many other issues. But much prayer is really needed at this time. And there is a correlation between what Dr. Mengele, in my humble opinion, this is my opinion, and what Dr. Mengele got up to in Auschwitz and other concentration camps on Jewish children, on Jewish adults. He had an obsession with twins, and the fact that surgeons now think it's perfectly acceptable to chop various body parts off young people. And this is where we've got to now. There will be a heck of a lot of pushback from certain individuals from those comments I've just made, but I passionately believe that we are just seeing a world unfold even more evil than we could even imagine. But this is where we're at. John, I'll end there, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision that seemed to take on I'm not sure. I haven't really been able to go through and analyze the opinion yet. My concern with the U.S. Supreme Court is that this goes back to a lot of experience of a lot of years in the legal system, that judges are always looking to the overarching judicial philosophy in the United States a lot of times seems to be, well, both parties should be unhappy with the result in a case. And then that means we've done our job. And so there's a good deal of compromise that goes on at the Supreme Court to make the decision marginally palatable for everybody, which means decisions are often not very good or outright bad and incorrect, like I think the recent birthright decision in the United States was. So I do know that the alphabet mafia groups that are pushing this agenda throughout the education system and medical profession are determined that this is going to be, they've said after the Supreme Court decision, which seems to be a victory, they're not going to stop. And various states that are allowing women to compete in men's sports say they're going to continue to do that. So there's going to be a real divide. So what happens when young women in a NCAA competition go to California, where this is going to be allowed to compete in a swimming meet and that type of thing? Or what if they get the NCAA championships and they allow a male to compete in women's swimming or women's basketball or something along that order? It's insane, and it puts young women, I think, at risk, both morally, privacy-wise, and in the competition itself, because males are built differently than females. I think it was a couple of years ago that speaking of, we started off talking a little bit about soccer. I think the women's national Olympic team competed against an all-star team of high school boys, and they got waxed by the boys. And that doesn't mean that women aren't great soccer players, but it's just like I wrestled in high school and college. There were, I could go up against a really good guy in the 120-pound weight class. I wrestled in the upper weight classes. You may find that surprising, but I could handle a 120-year-old guy who was really, really good and really, really strong for his weight class, just because I outweighed him by 80 pounds or more. And so we've done this in sports forever. So this is a concern. But then when we look at things in First and Second Timothy about things that will be predominant in the end times, it seems that this is going to be an issue. Is my mic getting? I hear a little bit of rustling, so I don't know if that's my mic or not. So anyway, so let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on, and this is something that has been going on just for the last what's happened in the last 5 hours. So we'll talk a little bit about UK politics, because you're in a bit of a turmoil there right now with your prime minister having resigned. But I think didn't I see him in Turkey this week at the NATO meeting?
Yes, you saw him in Turkey. As you looked at your screen, he was to the right of President Donald Trump, who was really really trying not to engage with him on the eyes, connect with him, just looking around, trying to ignore him, I felt. But he was in Turkey, very, very much so, because he really does enjoy the amount of flights that he has done ever since he was prime minister. And if you add up the amount of days he's actually spent outside the country of the UK, it's quite considerable. Not that I'm being sarcastic at all, John. Not at all.
So let's just sort of maybe recap for everybody some of the things that I think are kind of important this week. One of which is the NATO meetings that took place in Ankara, Turkey. Because of the way I'm set up here, it's much easier for me to do all of my videos when I'm at church, where I have a staff and a setup to do that, or in my office where I have multiple monitors. So I'm going to try to play a couple videos today. But so there was the Ankara meeting, NATO, I think there were 32 heads of state that showed up in Turkey, including al-Shara from Turkey, or from Syria. Well, that's probably a
slip of the tongue there, John.
But it's a truthful slip of the tongue that Syria. I'm not sure Syria exists, and al-Shara was there, and I don't think Syria, under any stretch of the imagination, is or ever will be in NATO. Turkey is, and so maybe the assertions that we'll hear later, assuming I can get the video to play, are that, hey, wait a minute, maybe Turkey is in charge of Syria, and so Turkey, one of the leaders of Turkey, aka Syria, was actually in Ankara this week, and some things happened there, and we could go on a lot about that. So that was an important meeting, and of course, we've gone back and forth over the last few hours with the Strait of Hormuz is closed, the Strait of Hormuz is open. There was a massive funeral of the dead Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran and Iraq this week. They flew his body down to Iraq to take a last lap around some of the mosques down there that are important in the Shia religion. And then he was buried in Mashhad. Tehran Times described it as the largest funeral in history. Now, I don't know that that's true. And I have some comments, again, I'm going to try to play in a video from I-24 the other day about why did so many people turn out for this funeral? Was it actually a big crowd, or were a lot of the pictures AI generated? And my own view is that a lot of people, upwards of 2 million, showed up at various times for this funeral. It's always hard to know when sparse crowds at a particular site, the timestamp on the video is not always available. So sometimes it might be early morning before the festivities or the ceremonies begin that they're taking these pictures and then saying, oh, look, there's nobody here. You know, they did that here in the United States during various elections when Trump said there was a big crowd at his first inauguration. And a lot of it was these were early morning things before everything got started, and they took a picture. So, oh, look, there's nobody there. There's nobody there. So understand that propaganda is operating on many levels in our world. Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about the NATO meetings. We'll talk about the current state of the war. But let's look at sort of maybe American and British politics. I think I saw something that King Charles made another announcement regarding his Astra Carta organization. If you remember, a couple of years ago, Prince Charles, who fashions himself as an environmentalist, and I think last week did we talk about this last week about the Sovereign Report came out and said that Charles was the defender of faiths.
Yes.
Not a defender of the faith, which has always been used with regard to the British king. I think that's significant. But a couple of years ago, in connection with his green agenda, environmentalist agenda, he started an organization called Magna Carta. Not Magna Carta. It was something to do with the earth. And I guess that wasn't large enough.
Isn't it a Magna Carta for the Earth? I think Carl, our dear friend Carl Jarek, explained that one to me. I think it's a Magna Carta for the Earth.
Right, and it was focused on the Earth, but then he subsequently came out with a thing called Astra Carta, which was, this is going to apply to the whole universe. So I guess his megalomania has gotten the better of him here in the latter times. But and I have friends who think he's a candidate for the man of sin, the son of perdition, and that type of thing. Whenever I see these things put forward right now, I think the devil could really do a better job of getting someone to do his agenda. But nevertheless, he's got Astra Carta. He's making an announcement this week. So we'll talk about British politics in just a minute. I'll shut up for a little bit. But the first thing is the disruption in American politics that's taking place and unfolding which will affect President Trump's agenda, Trump's agenda going forward, elections in the fall, and now we have a couple of really sticky issues. Last night, Lindsey Graham died. He was a big supporter of Israel. I think most people would describe him as a neoconservative, a war hawk. He was very close to John McCain. But he was a big supporter of Israel. He was just back, I think got back yesterday from a trip to Ukraine.
Yes.
And now he passed away last night from a sudden illness. Now, some people think it's a heart attack. I don't think that's been established yet. But during the course of the what do I want to say? The funeral of the Ayatollah Khamenei in Israel, or I'm sorry, in Iran this week, there were a lot of signs, a lot of posters, a lot of statements by people in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, statements attributed to the current Ayatollah Khamenei, who's not been seen in public. A photo has not been released of him. And many people are speculating, people who I respect a lot are speculating that he's not alive anyway, and that the IRGC is in charge anyway. And so here, for example, here's a photo in the funeral that says there will be blood, crosshairs on Trump. But there were a number of people in the crowd who had posters with crosshairs on them, like Laura Loomer, I think Vance, Trump, and Lindsey Graham.
And Ben Shapiro. And Ben Shapiro
right,
as well.
Ben Shapiro. So now Laura Loomer and some others are calling for a investigation into the death of Lindsey Graham, because we know we live in a time when no one ever dies a natural death. And by the way, Lindsey Graham had served 4 terms as the senator from South Carolina, and he had just won the Republican primary for the election this fall a little over a month ago. And so now all of that is kind of thrown into turmoil. Any comments on that?
Was he actually senator of Georgia and not South Carolina? Have I got that wrong?
Senator of South Carolina.
Oh, right. There'll be a number of people. I'm trying to be very, very tactful. There are a number of things in regard to Lindsey Graham that I profoundly disagree with. So I'm just gonna
take that as a given.
We'll just take that as a given. Well, of course, there's also the concern in regard to Mitch McConnell and the rumor mill around him. And I deliberately use those terms because I'm talking to myself, and I have slipped up on many occasions. It's where we try and get the facts before we make any comment. But that will be another concern as well. We're also very aware of the divide within the sort of this whole thing of the woke right from various people who are critical of America's, what they perceive as America's financial support of Israel, and not realizing what they then get in return for that, which is very much quite considerable. So there's lots of criticism of that, of course, from people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, etc. So I think it must be rather off-putting, and I understand it, particularly for people like Laura Loomer, when you're seeing your face and there's a target on there at the Ayatollah's funeral. Just going back to a comment that you made, John, when we're saying about people being there at the funeral, I have seen, tweets saying, well, some of those people bribed with food to attend. And if you're saying that there's a population of 90 million and they're saying 2 million turned up, well, there's a heck of a lot of people, understandably, that did not turn up whatsoever, including the person that they're now saying is the Ayatollah. In regard to the IRGC, that is a group that needs to be banned in the UK. Personally, all the embassy staff need to be told to actually leave the UK, but that isn't happening at the moment. And also, John, as you and I are aware of, the continuing shooting of ships in regard to the Straits of Hormuz, hence why there's been military action from the Americans, from American forces against Iran a number of days ago in regard to bombings and actions then taken. So you and I could sit here for hours. This is very, very important. I think the big thing when you're raising the whole thing of NATO, why is there any debate over the fact that they're even thinking of giving F-35s to Turkey in regard to Erdogan, in regard to the comments that he has made? Maybe we could come to that in a second. But that has also been up for huge debate, John, where people have said in the Twitter sphere and elsewhere, why are you even thinking of doing that in the Trump administration? I don't know where that is at the moment. And also, John, as you and I both know, there's President Trump going, yep, I've seen these. These are, yeah, I think it's fairly obvious what the statements they're making there. But also where President Trump keeps describing, Erdogan as his friend and all this kind of thing. Lots and lots of mixed messages, along with reminding ourselves of comments that you have made a number of weeks ago over the tweets that Trump will send out. He said in regard to Erdogan, in regard to Giuliani, in regard to Giuliani, in regard to Assad falling and then fleeing Syria, where Donald Trump is saying, Erdogan, I see what you're doing, very clever move, etc., etc. This is what is confusing people, and also to just quickly put things in context. And you've been building up on this for a long time. If we go back to the demise of the Caliphate, the demise of the Ottoman Empire, we then look at the Muslim Brotherhood, which is very much encouraged by people like Erdogan and others to then incrementally infiltrate countries to then bring about, they want the Caliphate again. And of course, Erdogan on a good day would like to be the new Caliph. There is so much history to go through in regard to Constantinople, in regard to the previous history of Turkey and where it's at now. That's very, very important. And as used last week, where we're talking about when we look at the book of Revelation, and it seems things go cyclical. This is what you were making that point, but you go from Constantinople to Istanbul and is understanding this history. But of course, Erdogan wants to be number one and he'd like to be the Caliph. And I'll just end this finally. Of course, this week it's then come out within the Twitter sphere that it was actually an Israeli doctor, it looks like, that saved his life, or was very much part of, I think he had cancer, very much part of saving his life. And an Israeli doctor was flown over there, flown into Turkey to then oversee surgery. So just throw that in regard to that as well, John. There's plenty to think about. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, there's you said a mouthful there, a lot of issues. So the Iranian regime is taking credit for taking out Lindsey Graham right now. The whole thing around Mitch McConnell, that happened back about June 14th, almost a month ago. He was rushed to the hospital. It's been very, very hush-hush. Nobody's seen him or a picture of him since. But the weirdest thing about all of it is there are people from the neighbors, and he lived near Lindsey Graham. So there were people like now, nothing seems to be private. Everything seems to be on video. So when Mitch McConnell, somebody was wheeled out of McConnell's house, never saw the face or anything, and put in an ambulance. So that's why people think McConnell had some kind of a heart attack. Nobody's seen him. People say he's okay, but understand this is a very sensitive time for the U.S. politically with what's going on in the Senate. And so now McConnell, former majority leader of the Senate, and Lindsey Graham, one of the Republicans, are out. Now, who is going to replace them? How will that impact the SAVE Act, which Trump is trying to get through the Senate to correct, I think, some of the deficiencies in our election system and lack of voter ID and that type of thing. So I think that, and so Graham and McConnell, there might be a filibuster, and they would be critical to breaking the filibuster. And so right now, I don't know that SAVE Act is going to pass. And I think it puts Trump's whole agenda at issue. There's also current legislation going through the House and subsequently will be going through the Senate on the National Defense Authorization Act, which has a lot of provisions in there about cooperation between the United States and Israel and other militaries. I'm shocked that they only focus on the Israel part.
Yes.
I guess the no Jews, no news thing applies to all of these people on the woke right and left. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is really a person of the left now. I don't think there's any question about that. I saw her on The View this week. I don't think I would play that interview because I might say something wrong. So the other thing that's kind of interesting in this, so we don't know what happened to Lindsey Graham. The Iranians are taking credit for it. He did go to Ukraine, and Graham was heading up a legislative thing for Trump to pass legislation that would allow sanctions to be reinstated or new sanctions to be put on Russia relative to its war in Ukraine. And that is a whole interesting thing. I think Russia's losing a lot of people in Ukraine.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I think by even the pro-Russian guys are saying 1 million Russian dead. Statistically, the person who is trained for a week to 10 days by Russia, called up, put in the army, maybe given a rifle and sent to the Ukrainian front after 7 or 10 days of training, on average will last about 25 to 30 minutes before they're killed or wounded.
Wow.
And Ukraine is doing this through drones. So I don't think Ukraine is going to take back the territory that Russia has got. Russia still has a significant industrial capacity, but Russia's only 137 million, 140 million people. You can't lose 1 million military-age men over 4 years. I mean, and put that in context. I grew up during the Vietnam era. The draft ended just before I was probably I had a very high draft number, lottery number. I was probably going to go someplace if I didn't get 4F'd out because of bad knees. But we lost 55,000 men in Vietnam. And put it in, and we're a country now of 340 million people. But put it in context, 1 million men out of 137 or 140 million men. And Ukraine has just decimated a lot of Russian refinery capacity and that type of thing. There are half-day long lines in Moscow and elsewhere. the Crimean Peninsula, according to reports that I've seen, and I'll admit they come from pro-Ukrainian channels or channels that support Ukraine, but they seem very rational and analytical, unlike the pro-Russia channels, by the way. Remember Douglas McGregor telling us that everything was going to be over in 4 days, and now we sit here 4.5 years later, almost 4.5 years later. It's not over. But Russia keeps continuing to say, well, we're going to attack Poland or something like that to see how strong NATO is. And that was part of the whole reason for the meeting in NATO. But understand, I think that the drone technology is pretty good for, I don't know how to say this. It's sort of mostly defensive and terrorism, I think is the best way to say it. For example, you're not going to advance into Russian territory and take it over using drones. You're going to have to put boots on the ground. And I just don't think Ukraine has that capability. And then the question becomes, and Russia's got a lot of internal problems. Chechnya is falling apart. That's where they've been getting a lot of their soldiers. The Wagner group got their rear ends kicked down in Africa a few months ago. They're still there selling gold and drugs to finance themselves. But Turkey's moved. I'm just saying there's so many balls in the air right now. I don't even know where to begin. So back to the NATO meeting. So Trump did, I don't know if you saw the entry of Trump when he arrived in Istanbul. It was pretty impressive from a welcoming standpoint. And none of the other leaders got this. Erdogan reserved this with the mounted police, the troops on horseback, and the parade coming up to his 990-room palace there in Ankara. As Trump was walking in, the other thing that Erdogan does, and he does this periodically, is he has these guards lined up, dressed like historical Ottoman warriors as Trump's entering the palace. And Trump was, I guess, from my standpoint, was way too deferential to Turkey in this meeting. And immediately people say, well, you don't understand. Trump's playing 6D chess. But I also know enough about Erdogan, having studied him for a very, very long time, that when you say this to an Islamist like Erdogan, they interpret it a whole different way than you think. They're going to interpret it with their Islamic supremacy thing. So, I mean, here's the example. Trump flies into Turkey on the 747 that was given to the U.S. by Qatar. I mean, how do you think Qatar looks at that?
Go on.
Well, no, I'm just like, Qatar says, look at what we did. They're using our plane. And then the interesting thing was that when Trump left, he went on the old Air Force One 747, because the new one, because there were threats. I mean, everybody in the world says there were legitimate threats from Iran and others about Trump flying on that plane. So that's why they brought in the older 747, which probably has more secure communications and avionics on it than the refurbished one that they got from Qatar, I don't know, a year ago or whenever it arrived. You're not going to remake that plane with the stuff that's on the 747s used by the president and maybe vice president. Those things take years to build, and you're not going to redo a plane, take out all the I mean, what if there's it's booby trapped, or the
Mm.
or the
Mm. Mm.
there's not booby trapped, but there's
Spying.
yes, spying equipment in there. And so Trump didn't fly back on the plane that he went on. And then the cover story was, well, we want to show the troops in the UK what the new 747 looks like. I don't know. This is, I mean, what do you think? You're watching this.
Yeah. Well, what do I think? I think there's a heck of a lot of confusion. I mean, let's throw this in the mix as well, where Erdogan is giving gifts of guns that look like Colt 45s or something off, a Clint Eastwood Western.
They're 357 Magnums. You might know what, being a resident of the UK, you might not know what that is. That was always kind of funny of some of the videos put up by people about coming to America for the World Cup, and they're like, people just walk around with guns on their hips, and
absolutely. Well, as someone who respects that, and it always makes me smile because I love it. Yes, I mean, I suppose when we mention the word Magnum, I'm immediately thinking of one of my heroes, Clint Eastwood. But yeah, I mean, look at that weapon as a gift that is given. But the whole thing, it is about, John, about the optics. And to be honest with you, if you're given a plane from Qatar, we know what Qatar has been up to for 30 odd years, putting billions and billions of dollars into the American university system and elsewhere, and also over here in various ways. So this is a deep concern, and of course they have been a big sponsor of the World Cup as well. There's badges on a certain airline that I will not mention that is very well known on your side of the pond. But why, there's all of this infiltration, and why have you accepted a plane from Qatar? Just throwing that out, because all the concerns that you have raised, other people have raised that in regard to what kind of spying equipment will be on there, etc., etc. Are we putting the president's life at risk and whoever flies on there? I don't know. What I do know is that Trump made 2 or 3 comments about, well, one particular comment to journalists: "Well, if you're flying with me, so to speak, maybe you should change your profession. Am I going to be here? I'm at risk," type sort of comments. I'm not playing that out.
No, he did come right out and acknowledge that this was a pretty big deal. I mean,
and then there's been chatter to say that information that that Israel have handed over their concerns about the threat on the president's life, that was then confirmed by Ambassador Huckabee, I think Mike Huckabee as well, then underlined that as well. I'm not playing any of that down. The big issue is when we're having these conversations, is we are trying to get down to the facts, but it's also that whole thing of not wanting to contribute to the rumor mill. But coming back to what you said, it is about optics when you're looking at people that are dressed in Ottoman historical attire, about the optics, the president, the presence that are giving over, and also where Trump is. I think we need to talk about just quickly the whole thing of the F-35s and what that would mean if that jet was handed over to Turkey. And of course, I'm not sure whether it was 2007, 2008, Turkey were kicked out of that whole operation and the creation of the F-35. Yeah, well, there you go. I think that graphic, that's a very good graphic. I think that graphic says it all, John, for a number of us personally.
Yeah, so Trump has acknowledged that there are legitimate threats on his life, and he said, if anything happens to me, there are 1,000 missiles locked and loaded and ready to go
for a year. Yep.
Yeah, and he may, these threats are around. We know Putin has assassinated, poisoned many of his political opponents in Russia. That's not a secret. So to go back to what we're talking about with Lindsey Graham, could this have happened with Lindsey Graham? I can't exclude it right now. And by the way, I have to say, I've already started seeing people talking about the fact that this is a plot. Now I've lost my well, this layout would be good enough for now.
What these people are all, they're coming out and saying there's a plot in regard to what, John?
That the Jews took out Lindsey Graham.
Right,
I've heard that. I've heard that today. I mean, you can set your watch on it. So
yeah, why are we surprised?
Yeah, I mean, look, and so I mean, let me just say this. So there was a preliminary hearing in the murder trial.
Yep.
Regarding the murder of Charlie Kirk this week. There was, by my estimation, I watched part of it. I also watched a number of people who were there, who watched all the evidence, some of which was only available to be seen by people in the courtroom.
Yes.
As opposed to what went out over the airwaves, over the internet. And I think to a person, almost every one of them that was there in the courtroom said that the evidence against Tyler Robinson is overwhelming. So I posted one of them. Immediately, I'm getting pushback with people who are curating these things that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk because he was turning against Israel. But from my perspective, I don't understand this because Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Ian Carroll, Megyn Kelly, and a very, very long list of people that I won't mention here have been curating this theory that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk, but they're more anti-Israel than Charlie Kirk was ever going to be. Why are they still walking around with these massively multi-million views on everything they put up? Why are they still allowed to exist? I don't understand it.
And they're making a heck of a lot of money. And I note the trial and completely support you in what you've said, where there is evidence that was only put forward for the people in the courtroom, and with your extensive legal experience, that will be nothing new for you to say. And also, I agree with you. The whole thing of the speculation that has been around there for months and months and months. And this is, I've said this the other week, and I've said it on other occasions. If we could stop the news cycle, John, for a short period of time, and then be able to look at all the facts and come back to that point, that would sometimes be really, really helpful, because we are trying not to, perpetuate the rumor mill. You're trying to drill down or inform people what you think is going on, not to comment for the sake of it. I mean, I'll just quickly say this. There's one particular channel that would be named nameless that I would regularly go on that I've decided not to. And the reason being is because I'll be phoned up last minute and go, can you come on here and comment about this? And you just think, well, one, there isn't enough time. And two, there's taking a lot of my time up and energy here. And actually, I am fed up with that. Also, at times, the perpetual news cycle. Now we've got to come out, give you a new update, It's very draining and it's very boring. And sometimes you're saying things, you suddenly go, I shouldn't have said that. And many people should not be saying some of the things that they are saying. and step back. But that's because people are then making money out of it. I mean, there's been over the last few days this whole thing of Amnesty International, the fact that the Amnesty International, I think the Israeli branch, turning around and saying no, Israel is not committing genocide. So the way Amnesty International headquarters outside deals with that is to shut down that branch within Israel. We've also, the point I'm making is, especially when other news channels will accuse Israel, for argument's sake, of doing something, starving a baby, about to kill 14,000, 14,000 babies are dying and all this. And then over time, not as fast as we would like at times, all of that is completely and utterly refuted, but it's still out there, hanging there, as if to say that it's truth. And this is the difficulty. And also, I believe, I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to myself on this as well. When I have the privilege to come on here and join you, John, and we have these discussions, the important thing is we're trying to speak, again, I've said it without it sounding repetitive, we're trying to speak the truth. We're trying to assess things to the best of our ability. We are also trying not to contribute to the rumor mill. And this is the problem. But also, when various news outlets put stuff out there and do not retract, do not then say on the front of their pages, for argument's sake, we just apologize. This is wrong. This is what is really, really important. But as we've discovered, it seems to be perfectly acceptable within the news cycle where Israel is concerned to throw any accusation at them, and even if it's been proved to not be right, to then just keep that, as I say, hanging out there. But you just said a very important thing in regard to the whole Charlie Kirk trial. It's come to trial. It's now come to trial.
It's a preliminary hearing.
Preliminary hearing, sorry, before that trial. So the evidence is being shown. And what would be great if various people that have said things over the last few months will then come on and apologize for that. Say, well, what I said is wrong.
Yeah, I'll hold my breath on that one.
And I agree. I fully agree with you. I'm sadly saying that with sarcasm, but it would be really important that people actually do that. But also, on the other hand, why are people giving them clickbait? Why are they believing it in the first place? Why aren't they actually assessing the facts themselves and coming to their own conclusion? I don't know. If you've got an answer for me on that, I would love to hear it.
I don't know the answer on that. I think people. I've never been I've never been one that I think I'm sort of a natural skeptic. Maybe that comes from being a lawyer and having had people talk to me, watch them testify. I remember one case where a guy testified, and I had talked to him before his deposition. And we were walking out of the deposition. We got out on the street, and he says, "Boy, and he says this to me. He says, I can't believe it was that easy to tell a bull-faced lie in my testimony." And I'm like, what now? As an officer of the court, and he was not my client. He was a witness, a former employee of my client. And so now I'm in this very difficult situation. Like, what do I do when there's somebody who's admitted to perjury in my face, and how do I handle that? And I will admit, I was sitting in the deposition, and he was very convincing in what he said. It was very helpful to my case, but now I have to deal with the issue that he was lying. So, and it happens. And so my point is, so I'm a little bit skeptical whenever I hear somebody with too many, your answer is too pat, too well woven together, which means to me that you're sort of making it up to some degree. And so I try to be fact-based in what I do, and I don't try to run to the camera every time I see something happen, but it continually amazes me. I mean, I think I've made 2 posts about the Charlie Kirk murder, and immediately the Candace Owens people are on there like, "Oh, did you consider this?" And I'm like, have you considered all the people that came out this week and said unmistakably she's a sociopath? She appears to be a sociopath, and she's vicious and cruel and evil, and she pulled one over on a lot of people, including a lot of us who thought it's great that she switched from the left to the conservative side. But how long did that last when she found the money coming from somewhere else? So and I know I get a lot of vicious comments about this. So, I mean, let me give you another example, Mark. We had this rather long discussion back and forth earlier this week about articles that appeared. I'm not going to identify the publication, a conservative publication, a publication that would be on the conservative side of the ledger. And these articles were essentially, one of them was about the Charlie Kirk murder. It was a regurgitation of posts by a guy named Max Blumenthal. Max Blumenthal is probably the supreme example of the self-hating Jew in the world today. He's Jewish. His father was Sidney Blumenthal, who was in some of the Democrat, like Clinton and Obama administrations at some high level. And so here's this publication is republishing and Max Blumenthal is the one who kind of got this whole ball rolling on the Jews did it. Max Blumenthal has an organization called the Gray Zone, and he's on RT, which is Russian propaganda television. There are suspicions, I don't know if they're true or not. People say he's paid by the Iranians. Maybe he's doing it for free. Maybe he's dumb enough to do it for free. But guess where he was this week? At the Ayatollah's funeral.
Right. He wasn't the only one, John, was he? I can't think of any other names right now.
Yeah, there was this guy named Jackson Hinkle.
Yep.
And then there was this lady named Carla, and I think we might have talked about her a little bit last week, who is parents are university professors wearing a hijab, saying that the greatest man in humanity on the planet of recent times was the Ayatollah Khomeini.
She's a woman who runs Palestine Action USA.
I think she was the founder of Palestine Action USA. And so you see all these pro-Palestinian things. And so, you know, the question is why are these things appearing on a conservative website? And then there was another one about settler violence. And all it was a regurgitation of a Washington Post article from earlier this week about settler violence in Israel and how Christians are leaving the West Bank, the areas of Judea and Samaria, where you've been with me. But a lot of it's just not true.
Yes.
You know, the Israel guys went out and did a great interview. They went to a place called Tabea, something like that, Taybeh, or it might be Tabyeh. And it's an old Christian Arab town. It's virtually empty now. The Christians have left. Now, the Palestinian Arab narrative is the Jews drove them out. The occupation drove them out. But that area is under the control of the Palestinian Authority. I had a chance meeting with a young lady who lives in an Arab town, and she talked about how she's constantly harassed, threatened with rape or murder, and she's there to try to help. But I don't even know if she's a Christian or not. So a lot of these villages, and I think the Israel guys went to the Christian leader in that town. There had been a fire there around a church. Everybody said, "Oh, look, they're burning the church down." No, there was fire set around the church. And a lot of times these things are set by Arabs, sometimes not. But the guy said, they said, "Well, will you come on camera and talk about why people left?" And he says, it's Israel. When it's Muslim persecution of Christians that's causing them to leave, but people are afraid to say this.
Is that the area that Ambassador Huckabee also went to investigate as well?
He did, and I think Ambassador Huckabee did come out and say, "Oh, this is terrible. This is terrorism by Jewish settlers." But my personal opinion right now, having looked at it, watched the Israel guys going down there, is that Ambassador Huckabee unfortunately got out a little bit ahead of the facts.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's an ambassador, so he's not going to have the ability to do a real deep investigation into what's going on. But Bethlehem has gone from 85% Christian to 10% Christian, while it's under the control of the Palestinian Authority. We've had friends who've been attacked. But I'll give you an example, and I hesitate to do this because the guy is kind of a lightning rod for the Zionist right. He's a lightning rod on the Zionist right, and people don't like him because they think his views are extreme. But I'm not even going to give his name. I saw an interview with him this morning, and he talked. And Mark, you've been there with me. You have gone into. You've seen the red sign. So people that don't know what we're talking about, when you go into certain areas of the West Bank, this is the biblical heartland. Goes all the way down to the Jordan Valley. It's the highlands of Israel. It's the watershed of Israel. It's called the West Bank. Biblically, it was Judea and Samaria, the heart of Judea and Samaria. And it is incredibly rich with biblical sites. When I took my tour there last fall, and which I hope to do this fall, but I will be doing, by the way, in the fall, October 2027. So if you're interested in going on, I think most people that went on would say it's a little bit different than tours that most groups do. But it costs more because we have to do certain things. But when you go into these areas, there's always this giant red sign. You are entering an area under the control of the Palestinian Authority. Entry to these areas is strictly prohibited by law, subject to fines and imprisonment for any Israeli who comes in here. And part of that is a defense thing. So, for example, when you go into the biblical city of Shem, which is in Nablus, you will pass red signs. And you may go past an Israeli military checkpoint going in because they don't let Israelis go in there. When we went to Joshua's altar on Mount Ebal up in Samaria with Aaron Lipkin and some others on our tour, some of the Israel 365 folks, we had to meet at a place before we went there, get on a bus with bulletproof windows, and have an IDF escort to go to the biblical site of Joshua's altar. This person who I saw interviewed this morning, he said, listen, and I think he's being interviewed by an Arab guy, by the way. And the Arab guy says, well, you're so extreme. And he goes, you're just full of fear. And he goes, listen, here's the reality. I drove down here today to meet with you. As I was driving, I had to go through a checkpoint. You know the traffic in Jerusalem and checkpoints, it backs up. Why does it back up? Because Arabs in Israel and everybody else is coming through the checkpoint. And they're coming to Israel to shop, to go to nice restaurants, to see sights in Jerusalem and elsewhere. And he said, but if I went to this Arab village, I would not return alive because I'm a Jew. This is a Jew in Israel saying, if I go to this Arab village in Israel,
yep,
I would not return alive.
Yep.
That's the reality. And so he says, so I have to put up with these checkpoints so they can have a better life. But I can't go to places that I want to go to. You know, you go up around Shiloh. You go up to, we were up in Metula, the Golan. Everywhere you go, you see these red signs. Don't go here. Don't go here. It's insane. And I don't think people at the Washington Post come and they never even look at what that sign says. Here's an example. I'm talking way too much. There's a guy named Ro Khanna. He's a left-wing, pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel congressman. He was in Israel this week. And the story that was passed around was complete, total propaganda. Because the bus that he was on tried to go to an area that was under special Israeli military control. Because there are terrorists all over. You see weapons stores being found and tunnels being found in Judea and Samaria all the time, the only purpose of which is to get into Israel to kill Jews. So Israel has spent literally billions of dollars trying to prevent this from happening since the first and second intifadas. So the bus tried to go where they've been told you can't go. So they detained the bus, they came in, they searched it, and eventually it might have been they allowed it to go. My tour went to some of these places where we had to go through special checkpoints to get to them. And we didn't complain that we were detained. We were just people were trying to protect us from what might happen if we got off the track. So
well, we've had comments made in the House of Commons this week. Again, completely ill-informed, prejudice. You know, Israel's committing genocide. We've even, various comments that have been made at Chatham House by a politician. This is then perpetuated deliberately. We've also, because this is the most important thing to say when you're saying about UK politics, let's just say this. So Keir Starmer, of course, resigned as leader of the Labour Party. He's still in there at the moment while they're sorting out who's going to be the next Prime Minister. And the number one front runner is a gentleman called Andy Burnham. So he was mayor of Manchester. This week, he made a little speech saying that Labour needs to do better on Gaza. Labour needs to do better on Gaza. So this is the most important thing that he has said, that not dealing with any of the issues that our country is facing, because, of course, according to him, the Labour Party policy and not doing better on Gaza is according to him, is the most important thing that they need to be doing.
So this I want to make sure I understand. This is Andy Burnham, right?
This is Andy Burnham, who is looks like the principal runner to then being a Prime Minister of this country. I'd just quickly say the Labour Party has 400 odd members of Parliament in Westminster and cannot even find one within them to then replace Keir Starmer. They then someone stood down in a by-election in an area called Macclesfield. Here the gentleman stood down. I'm being polite. And Burnham then ran in that by-election, previous by-election, Keir Starmer wouldn't allow him to do that. Burnham resigned as mayor of Manchester, then ran, and then he won it. He is now the member of parliament for Macclesfield, because the most important thing to all the other members of the Labour Party in Westminster is that he is the one that's going to come in as Prime Minister, save their jobs and all this. And just to say that the person that stood down in the by-election has now been appointed to a particular job. I think the rumor is that he's all right. The comment has been made that he's just doubled his salary by doing that. The manipulation. So Andy Burnham will come in as looks like as Prime Minister. Will we have an election? He needs to have a mandate. He'll have no mandate whatsoever. Whatever I think of Keir Starmer, which is unrepeatable on this family show, at least he had won an election, even if nearly 40% of the British electorate didn't participate in that. But that's another thing, which is very, very important. So again, it's all about Gaza. It's all about this is what Israel is doing, even if Amnesty International office before it was withdrawn and others within the UN have said, no, this Israel was not committing genocide. They are keeping this new trope going and going and going because Andy Burnham, according to some, then has to appeal to a particular demographic to get their vote. Remember, we have 5 members of parliament in Westminster, where the number one issue is Gaza, not whether Birmingham, as the second biggest city in this country, is actually getting its dustbins emptied properly, and a load of other issues that are very important to the people of Birmingham and elsewhere. We have become extremely sectarian in this country. It's not very comfortable to say, but it is true. And my shout out will be, if people are not following Insurrection Barbie, do it. If people are not following who's Amex first name there, John, in regard to where she's reports on all the Rare Foundation and what's going on.
Amy. Well, her handle, it's not her real name, but it's Amy Meek, MEK.
Yeah, Amy MEK, who is also brilliant on these things. Follow that. John Spencer and all the furore, understandable furore of what's happening in Texas and elsewhere, and asking America to wake up to this and all the issues. And also, as you spoke about, a number, maybe 2 years ago, and you've been shouting about this, what was happening in Maryland in regard to a big mosque that was built there, and Erdogan flew over to open it and all this kind of thing.
Actually, that was 9 years ago that I
9 years ago. I do apologize. That is rather worrying. 9 years ago. So people to wake up to all of these issues. But that is what is happening politically over here. Andy Burnham, who, we're a report that's just come out. The auditors, they can't even audit and come to a conclusion in regard to the finances of this country. They can't even sign off a government audit. And the whole point is, there's £81 billion that have gone missing. Where is it? And because it's just printed so easily, like quantitative easing, and because you've got people who are running this country into the ground, who have got no business experience whatsoever, have had no life experience whatsoever outside the public purse, and who are civil servant minded, have never run any private enterprise in their life, including the man that holds presently the Prime Minister position, Herr Starmer. It's disgusting. There is no business experience whatsoever, but that is socialism for you. That's the Fabianism for you. That's communism for you. And hence why these people have done whatever they can, even though we voted to leave the EU, to inch us back in without then officially saying that we've gone back. Right, enough of British politics. And as you can see, it winds me up.
I should say something too. So you mentioned earlier Erdogan gave all the NATO guys that came a 357 Magnum revolver with like the Dirty Harry. Well, I think Harry's was a 44 Magnum, but 357 Magnum revolver, chrome plated, very nice, with like 6 bullets.
Yep.
So somebody, when Mark Carney, who ostensibly is running Canada into the ground.
Yep.
He's a Fabian socialist, London School of Economics.
Yep.
I think he was a central banker in London, and now he
was in charge of the Bank of England at one point. He was in charge of the Bank of Canada. He has various, to me, dubious political thinking. Plus, he then moved his business dealings to New York in regard to a hedge fund. But we'll end there.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So he sort of he almost checks all the boxes. So a reporter, you'll have to look this up on X, asked him, so what'd you think of the gun that you got from Erdogan? And he's like, well, I'm not even looking at it. I didn't even look at it. I'm not going to go anywhere near that, because I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of these are in the United States that people have. And he was just like, oh my goodness, a gun. Oh my goodness, but he has no trouble doing something else. So let me go back because we could go. This one could be very, very long, but let's just hit a few bullet points. So the Trump NATO meeting, Trump is there, and the discussion is F-35s to Turkey, but that's not the only part of the discussion. The other part of the discussion are jet engines for the new Turkish fighter jet.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that?
Well, personally, why are you giving any of this towards to Erdogan or to Turkey? Shouldn't be doing that, because, as the Israelis already said, if you're going to hand over F-35s to Turkey, then basically it then disturbs the air superiority that we have with the F-35 and the military hardware that comes with that within the area, within the Middle East, and within that theater. Why is he then giving these engines? If you were giving it to a country that was Erdogan incrementally, and Pishek Veliki on Israel 365, who has done incredible, I just say follow him, who's just done phenomenal work, has done phenomenal, brilliant work on this, because he was explaining Erdogan's background, wanted to be a footballer, his dad said no, etc. And then who he then mixed with politically. But Turkey was moving away, of course, from being a Islamic state. Erdogan has then done so many things to then bring Islam into the center of that, and to kick back at all of that. If you could actually secure a particular mindset that was not thinking of that way, then maybe you would think about giving certain military hardware. I would personally say no. Also, let's remind ourselves, what did Turkey do in regard to Cyprus in 1974? I think they invaded, John, and they have not given that land. They've not given the part of Cyprus that they occupy back at all. They haven't done that. I wouldn't give them anything. But then again, with Macron, with France, with deals that he is then signing with Giuliani in Syria, I've got huge issues in regard to that, let alone what we're then facing in Lebanon. But frankly, you shouldn't be giving any of those engines and any of the F-35s, etc., in my humble opinion. And why, absolutely. Why is President Trump even thinking of that? Maybe it's part of the 8D chess he's playing. I really don't know, John.
So I've put up a picture there. This is a picture. This was all over Turkish social media yesterday, or Friday or yesterday. And what is it? you see the name at the top, Hagia Sophia. And what it is, it's a letter from, I don't know if it's from Erdogan or somebody in the Turkish government saying, hey, look at this. This is the 6th anniversary of the glorious return of this to the mosque that it always was, which is just a bold-faced lie. This is the Hagia Sophia. It remains, I believe to this day, the largest church ever built in the history of Christianity. And 6 years ago, it had been when Ataturk formed modern Turkey about 1923 out of the remains of the Ottoman Empire. He created a secular state and he turned this building into a museum. It had been a church for 1,000 years. The Turks invaded the Anatolia Peninsula, colonized the Anatolian Peninsula, kicked out the Greeks, and that sort of thing changed Istanbul to Constantinople. I saw a hat this week, make Istanbul Constantinople again. And they changed this church into a mosque. It became, for Ataturk, for almost 100 years, it was a museum. 6 years ago, the anniversary, 6 years ago, Friday or Saturday, Erdogan turned this back into a mosque. And this is significant. I mean, remember that poster I use all the time. Yesterday, Hagia Sophia, today, Umayyad, and tomorrow, Al-Aqsa, Jerusalem. This is their battle plan. And by the way, so Trump does this F-35s and jet engines for other Turkish fighter jets to Turkey. Now, I don't know if that will pass Congress, and with the incapacitation of Mitch McConnell and the death of Lindsey Graham yesterday, I think a lot of if you thought there were a lot of balls in the air in the United States relative to the Middle East, and you wake up this morning, there are a bunch of balls added to the mix. So Trump, I don't know whether this will go through. I think this is a very bad idea. And immediately the people, the ministers and that type of thing in Israel or in Turkey are running with this. And they're trying to, excuse me, I want to get back here to our layout. So I don't, it's hard to describe. So Trump does this with Erdogan. Then there is a meeting at NATO with the leader of the puppet leader of Syria, al-Shara, al-Jilani. And Trump, I think, made some inappropriate comments about the Golan Heights and Israel wouldn't exist if I wasn't around. And I gave him the Golan Heights. And no, President Trump, they took that back in a war.
1973, yeah.
Yes, well, 67 and 73.
Yeah.
And defended it, and they've annexed it. And you go up there, it's a very peaceful area. Unless there's Hezbollah rockets flying into Majel Shams, killing kids on a soccer field.
Yep.
So this is, and so what did he say with al-Shara? This is, maybe you don't even know about this from some recent developments within the last 24 hours. He said, we're releasing terror designation against the Syrian government. So what is the response of Syria? Syria has divided, al-Shara's government has divided its military into 5 regional units. Every single one of those units is led by a guy who used to be an al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, terrorism. He was associated with HTS, which was the organization funded, supported, trained by Erdogan over many years to take out the Assad regime. So the response of al-Shara is to create a completely terror-led government, military, throughout Syria. And what impact does this have on the borders of Israel? Now, I'm going to play a video here. Give me 1 second. I have to pull it up. This is an interesting video, and this will lead to the next part of our discussion. Hang on here. I've got to get here. Okay, so I'm gonna play this. And here we go. This is a video that was posted the other day. Now, what this video is a recreation of all of the rocket attacks on Israel from October 7th, 2023 until about a month ago. And we can talk while this is playing. So let me tee it up for playing here. I don't think there's any sound on it. So this is, so you can see the red areas where these rockets are landing, and this will go on for a couple of minutes. And then you see the red areas in the north where rockets and missiles, and then you'll see eventually some coming in from elsewhere, which are missiles and that type of thing from Iran. And the question is, there you go. Here are the ones coming in from Iran. You see how they come in from high altitude. There's rockets from Gaza going up towards the north, towards Tel Aviv and Sderot and Ashdod. And you see the rockets in the north coming into the Galilee region from the Hezbollah areas in Lebanon. This is a phenomenal video. Look at this. Now, look, this is 2.5 years of rocket, missile, mortar attacks compressed into about 2.5 minutes. But the question is, what would we do if this happened? And I keep asking this question of people in Israel. So everybody says, oh, Israel, their response to October 7th was disproportional. So I want you to look at this map and tell me if that was being rained down on you, what would be a proportionate response? Well, nobody will ever give the answer.
Yeah. Well, frankly, I just want to tie that in with this. So, Chief Rabbi warns genocide document due to be discussed by Church of England Synod will harm peace. Well, frankly, that graphic needs to be shown at the General Synod of the Church of England lunacy, where it's just full of left-wing Marxist bishops, in my humble opinion. The chief rabbis warned that Palestinian Christian groups document due to be discussed by the Church of England governing body contains so much falsehood about Israel can only harm the cause of peace. Now, this is happening in the C of E. I mean, the Methodist Church is just as lunatic. They need to see this graphic and ask themselves that question as well. Go there, go to Judah and Samaria, go up to the border with Lebanon, go up to the border with Syria, go to Kibbutz near Oz, which you and I have been to, go to the Nova Festival tribute in Israel, go to the Nova Festival exhibition that's in London, etc. Educate themselves. More importantly, so here we go. On Sunday, the Synod today is set to consider a motion encouraging engagement with a moment of truth, faith in a time of genocide, published by Kairos Palestine as part of a quest for greater understanding of the conflict. Well, with great respect, maybe you and I could just fly in and give them a few lessons so that they can then understand the conflict. Do they not understand that Israel actually, sorry, I'm just slamming my glasses down because it annoys me. Why do they not understand that Israel withdrew from Gaza. There were thousands of Jewish citizens that were then were removed from Gaza. They left Gaza with an opportunity to turn it into a beautiful place on the Mediterranean. There, they then refused to do it. What about their understanding of the Lebanon civil war in 1975? These people are blinded to that, and they're also not as far as I'm concerned, they're not reading their Bible. And when you look at the graphics of all these rockets, I'll end with this, John. Do they not understand that in April 2024 was the biggest ballistic missile assault, I believe, in history against a nation? And that was Iran firing in all these ballistic missiles into
you can see it in
Israel.
that video.
And
the things coming from the east.
Exactly. You can see it in that video. That's why that video is so powerful. And what annoys me, and Malali, or whatever her name is, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the woman, then goes over to Israel, and then it's who she is then mixing with, of pro-Palestinian, etc. She's then mixing with, and then on not having any understanding of history whatsoever, in my humble opinion. And they are debating this, let alone debating the whole transgender issue, which they're also debating, and would like to keep that quiet as well, John. So yeah, we're trying to speak truth. That graphic, you're right. How would we in the United Kingdom react if all of those missiles were coming in on a regular basis? We couldn't even get a ship out quick enough for the other side of Cyprus when Iran is then firing a missile at Akrotiri base there in Cyprus, and it's embarrassing, and elsewhere we can't even do that. I'll shut up.
No, so I've asked this question too. Is there's a lot of controversy in Israel. There's word that they're going to be starting terror trials. They're probably years away. I mean, the Israeli justice system moves with great lack of speed. I mean, Netanyahu's been on trial for 8 years. Okay, yeah. 8 years, folks. Same cases. They might have added a couple. And even, by the way, most recent one, because elections are coming up, the judges handling the trials said to the prosecutors, you're not making their case. So the prosecutors made and I'm not sure I understand exactly how they work, but here in the United States, if you're in a trial, the prosecution makes its case. And at the end of that case, the defense has the right and obligation to say, Judge, they didn't make their case. It should be dismissed, and the jury shouldn't even decide it. And cases are dismissed like that all the time because the prosecution did not meet their burden of proof, or they'll dismiss certain of the charges. I see this all the time. So when the prosecution finished many, many months ago, a year ago, the judges handling Netanyahu's bribery trial said, you didn't make your case. Now, what the prosecution said, this would never happen in the United States. The prosecution said, well, we want to cross-examine Netanyahu. And so over the last year, he spent, I don't know how many days, probably over 30 some days, testifying in this trial about what my view is nonsensical charges. When he's leading a country that's at war, an existential war for its existence. This shows you how far people on the left or will allow their hatred to drive them in politics. This happened in the United States. This is going to happen too. So here's and so now they're starting terror trials, and who knows when those will ever get to trial. And they want to do investigations. There's been some about why did this happen on October 7th? And there's a lot of, frankly, just plain propaganda out there about what happened. But Mark, you were down there. You've seen the bases. The bases, we think of a base like the bases out in Kansas, I think it's Fort Riley. I mean, you drive for miles and miles, like 40 miles, and you're still, Fort Riley is to your right. Israel doesn't have the space for military bases like that. And so there were people down there, and there was and I've talked to IDF guys, they're concerned about the lack of response on October 7th. Why did it take us so long to respond? But again, it's a logistical problem. You could have sent small groups of Israeli soldiers running into Gaza, and what would have happened to them? Killed, kidnapped, and now you have a bigger problem than you have. You have to marshal your forces, get organized, get your gear together and all that stuff, and that takes time. And before Israel ever went in there were already these charges of genocide. So John Spencer on X, I think it's Spencer Gard, Gard, on X, has a phenomenal article out today about why this is not a genocide. And so I'm going to make a statement here. When I post stuff about this, and you get on my Facebook page or X account, and you start posting this nonsense about this is a genocide, I'm going to probably delete the comment and you, because I don't have time. I'm older than Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham came back from Ukraine yesterday and had all sorts of plans. And this is a thing we should always keep in mind. Life is a vapor. It can go away at any time, and you always need to be right with the Lord, because Lindsey Graham got back from Ukraine yesterday and had all these plans, and he's standing for election in November, and those are all gone now. And I'm going to guess within a month, a lot of people will be asking the question, what was that guy's name from South Carolina that seemed to be supportive of Trump? Because he's gone. And so we need to always be ready to meet the Lord at any time. That's my point. But so with regard to October 7th, I've asked the question, if Israel knew everything that was going to happen, and there's some indication that people within the IDF and other security apparatus knew this was coming, let's say they said, okay, what do we do to stop this? How would it have been different from what they did after October 7th took place? And my answer is the only way to deal with the problem is to do what they've done. But imagine if they had done this without a couple thousand dead Israelis and hundreds taken hostage. What would the world reaction have been? What would the Church of England people been saying now? And so now you got these Church of England people just regurgitating all the nonsense that we've heard at the Christ at the Checkpoint conference and Kairos and Friends of Sabeel, FOSNA, Friends of Sabeel North America, and the Max Blumenthals, and I can't remember the name of the guy who's with the Friends of Sabeel North America. He's a son of an former IDF general. And they're just left-wing, Jew-hating lunatics, and they've been infused with Russian propaganda to an immense degree. Well,
they would have on their shelves, so many spare copies of the Protocols of Zion, and then there's no understanding, as you have just pointed out, of what happened in the 60s with Arafat. Where did he train? Where did Abbas train? Looking at all of the Russian influence within the area, and Arafat going, well, we're now going to victimhood. And then after the 6 Day War in 67, they haven't started. Israel has not started any war, and then particularly in there, again warning people, please don't do this, please don't attack. miraculously in 6 days. But it's looking at what is then going on, which you have just alluded to. I don't know what the Church of England, well, I think I would do what the Church of England would say, what even the Methodist Church would say, because there is such a fundamental stream of replacement theology. There's also, to me, a lack of belief in turning around and saying that Jesus is returning. I don't think they even believe that, or even believe half of what Scripture is saying. I am talking about the people at the top. There are other people within those people within the Methodist Church or the Church of England that actually do believe the Bible. But I'll leave that one. Aside. But this is where we're at, John. You know, we really are.
Yeah, it's it's very difficult to get. I mean, you ought to see my notes. I mean, I've got notes and write notes to myself and emails and this and that and links and all this. So I do want to do something because I have tons and tons of videos. So there's the Turkey thing, there's the Syria thing. And then I will, in an act of extreme mercy and grace, will not play the video of the speech that Rahm Emanuel, the former chief of staff for Barack Obama, and then after that, the mayor of Chicago. He went to Tel Aviv University.
Yep.
And then there's a number of video interviews that he's done subsequent to that speech. So you can find the speech on X, on YouTube, and I would watch it. Essentially, what Rahm Emanuel said was this: Benjamin Netanyahu needs to go. He has turned Israel into a pariah state. And in a subsequent interview, I think I sent you a note about that. There were 4 pillars of modern government, about how they controlled their image and how people thought after that. So let me see. So I sent you the link. There were sort of 4 pillars. And how dare you? You sent me Marjorie Taylor Greene interview.
I do humbly apologize.
Was that like, so I didn't drink coffee this morning? I just got the shot. So I don't see my notes to you here, but there were essentially 4 things that he said. By the way, while I'm thinking about it, if you want to read about the reorganization of the Syrian military, Zarit Zahavi and the people at Israel-alma.org they did a big article on it, and they just revised it with maps and everything about the 5 regions that HTS terrorist commanders are now in charge of the military around Syria, and what's the impact going to be on the border. So Rahm Emanuel said there are a few things that a country has to do to improve its image. One of it is military strength. One of it is economic. One of it is sort of geopolitical thing. And then, is it attractive to people to come to? And that's probably a misstatement, but there's a Jerusalem Post interview with him that sort of talks about these things. And he says, Israel's failing on everything except they've only focused on the military. Now, wait a minute. Rahm Emanuel, what planet do you live on? The Israeli economy is perhaps the strongest economy in the world right now in terms of growth and that sort of thing. Now, we can argue whether we like what they're growing in and the technology and everything. And I just saw a video. They're developing technology because what's happening in space? Countries are putting up satellites with weaponized satellites that can shoot straight down. Intercepting and doing something to stop that is very difficult because of the speed. And Israel's developing technology and technology in space to fight this. I don't know all the details yet, but this is where this is going. This is terrorism in space.
Yeah.
All those things you saw with the rockets, okay, coming into Israel, or the warnings. Imagine if that's coming straight down from space. And it's at hyperspeed. And this is a problem. And this is, I mean, word today is the IRGC. And I know everybody says it's propaganda, but everybody told me all the videos of underground missile cities were propaganda until they were really real.
Absolutely.
And they're saying they've been rebuilding their thing, and now they are manufacturing drones at, I don't know, 2 or 3 times the rate they were manufacturing drones before all this stuff started. The U.S. is doing things like we took out a key railway bridge between Russia and Iran. And we don't even know what all the geopolitical ramifications of that are, because that was a conduit through which drones and everything passed back and forth between Russia and Iran. China's involved. And China may be the big thing behind all of this that people are trying to get to. It's all very complicated. And today I've heard 3 different versions, at least. Strait of Hormuz open, closed, open, closed, open. I don't know what it is or not. I'm not there. All I'm saying is this is incredibly disruptive. And now Trump is in I think, a weakened political position because of the legislative support that he needs for financing this, continuing it, enacting additional sanctions beyond what he can do as an executive. I cannot begin to tell everybody how complicated I think this is. So here's Rahm Emanuel says, military, economic, geopolitical, and sort of the environment of your country. And he says Israel's a pariah state because they failed on everything except the military. And it is incredibly, it fulfills the definition of irony that Rahm Emanuel, who was the mayor of Chicago,
absolutely,
would talk about how unattractive Israel is for people.
Oh, the man that said, "Never let a crisis go to waste."
That's right. He's an Alinskyite, and he's saying we got to get rid of Netanyahu and all our problems will go away. And he's going to be running probably for president.
And just remember, under the Biden regimes, how much, under Obama and then Biden, how much they were trying to undermine whatever people think of Bibi Netanyahu. Just say he was the elected representative prime minister of Israel, and they did whatever they could to undermine him.
Well, that's kind of funny that you say that, Mark, because when you bring that up, all the people in the Obama 1, 2, Obama 1 and 2, and Obama 3 administrations say, well, we never did that. They were funding opposition to Netanyahu. And here you have Rahm Emanuel essentially not sort of admitting to it in his speech in Tel Aviv. And so what happened? They gaslit us for years on all of this stuff.
And then, of course, in Chicago, you look at the murder rate. in Chicago. It'd be interesting to look at the murder rate when Ron Emanuel was then mayor there, in charge, and that actually, if they'd actually enforced the gun laws in Chirac, I think Chicago used to be called, that the death rate would have come down, and some of the awful incidents that have happened when you've got a drive-by shooting, bullets go into people's houses and they're jumping into a metal bath to survive. I mean, we could go on here, but yes, you're absolutely right. I think it's a phrase of pot calling the kettle black. He is talking out of his derriere. And there is so much again to unpack in regard to his past, like many others.
Yeah, and I see somebody mentioned Sean Ryan in the chat. He did a 4.5-hour program with Candace Owens this week, and he was just fawning all over her. It was such this, and I'm thinking like this guy was a Navy SEAL or whatever, or Army. I don't know what he was, some kind of special forces guy. And I'm sorry, this was pathetic what he did. It was pathetic. And so many people have come out. I don't understand what happened to him. I really don't. So,
well, I think the biggest thing that we're dealing with, one of the biggest warnings that Jesus said: "Do not be deceived." Deception, deception, deceive, deception, deception. Do not be deceived. And this is constantly, I believe, is what we're dealing with. Is our biggest. It's one of our biggest challenges, right? And I'll just say that. I'll just say this: Do I get everything right? Does John get everything right? No. What we're trying to do is have a discussion, point people to information of what's going on. I'm really sorry that people are so quick to hurl abuse at you, John, to say, well, what, make a comment, oh, they're doing genocide, they're committing this, that, and the other, and not look at the facts. I'm really sad about that. But also the fact that we can't step back from the news cycle and go, no, that's not quite right, or we're going to wait until we get the information on, as I've said this about 6 times, and wait until we get the information and then bring that forward. And it is very, very sad when people that we've followed at times or listened to, like, with Candace Owen, red pill, black pill, all of that, and going, oh, wasn't this really important? And then their views we profoundly disagree with. And when we say that, we've got people going, well, I follow her, I follow Tucker Carlson and all of this. Well, we're trying to really follow the truth. And it's quite challenging.
Okay, so now I want to, so we talked about Turkey, talked about Hakan Fidan, the foreign minister. I think we might have mentioned this last week, who's saying that there's Israel is a problem for all of humanity. This sounds like out of the 1930s in Germany.
Yes, it does.
And so I'm going to play part of one video. I'm going to try to play it. I don't know if it'll play. There's a program on I-24. You can go to I-24 English, and there's a program. You might have to scroll through the live tab to find it. There's a program called The Rundown. And my cable system, the cable provider has I-24, so we can watch it and you can follow it. And I had a very interesting conversation on The Rundown the other night. Jakob Lepine, Michael Pregan, and Ruth Wasserman Landy, and another guy, I can't remember his name. And so I'll just sort of summarize what Michael Pregan said. He said, look, what's going on with Iran is a big problem. He called it the memorandum of misunderstanding, because the Iranians are going to take it a certain way regardless. And now we see, by the way, Witkoff and Kushner came back, supposedly said the Iranians have no intention of living up to any of this. That's why Trump started attacks again. And there's some sort of conflict, I think, a little bit between Israel and the U.S. right now. Israel's not responding because the U.S. doesn't want it to respond, because the U.S. thinks it'll make it more difficult. So that's sort of a win for the Iranians, because I think all these guys were out in public at the funeral, and I think people know where they are. And I think it's time to remove that next layer of leadership. And there's tremendous economic harm being caused to Iran. And it is possible the regime could have trouble, but I think this is a problem that's going to wait for years. So after Michael Praga did his thing on I-24, I'm going to try to play this. Tell me if you can hear the sound or not. This is Ruth Wasserman Landy. She's going to talk a little bit about Syria. This is about 3 minutes long, and we'll finish. We'll probably finish this because I got about 8,000 other things here on my computer. But here we go. Hang on a second. See, I got to get to where I can share the screen. Okay. Now tell me if the sound comes up.
No sound yet.
No sound?
No.
Okay. I'll have to do one. I have a different setup at church, and so I don't have it set up to play the sound correctly. But she says, again, as she's been saying for months, there no longer is a Turkey or a Syria. It's
Syria.
Turkey.
Yeah.
And she says, look, Trump's focused on economic issues, and that's fine, but Israel has security issues. And right now we're sort of teetering on the brink. If Iran is attacking all the Gulf Coast countries, that's disrupting a lot of things within the Gulf Coast countries, how they view Israel, what they do, their relationship with the United States. Because I think some of them are thinking like the United States really can't be relied on to help us fight this Iranian thing. But if Iran launches something against Israel, it's going to be, Israel's going to respond. That's for sure. So, since I couldn't play Ruth, I'll play this thing. I'll show you this thing, and then we can wrap up with this. So there was a poll that came out this week that among American Jews, Mamdani is significantly more popular than Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well,
this is insanity. And so his office this week released a map, New York City immigrant enclaves. Okay. And if you've been in New York City, you know there are these neighborhoods. Pam and I spent a couple of weeks up there one time just walking around. And so they have, look at the way he describes it. So Staten Island, they have Little Africa in Staten Island. And number 22 is Little Mexico and Port Richmond.
Where is Little Italy, John? Where is that?
This is a map of the 5 boroughs of New York.
Yep.
So Staten Island. So between Staten Island is a borough, sort of over towards Jersey. You have to take a ferry over there. And the Statue of Liberty you pass on the Staten Island ferry. So he goes all around. So he's got Brooklyn and he's got Manhattan. So like number 29 is Little Ukraine. Yep. Number 5 is Koreatown in Manhattan. Number 2 is Chinatown in Manhattan. But what is it? These are all, I don't know how to say this, non-white minorities. All these enclaves. He doesn't mention Little Italy.
No. Is that why Robert De Niro is leaving?
Well, I'm thinking like, I saw it kind of salty language. There was an Italian lady that said, hey, Mandami, Vito Corleone is going to pay you a visit because you removed Little Italy. And it's a defined neighborhood.
Yeah,
wonderful little bakeries, coffee shops, and gelato places and stuff. It's beautiful. The flowers and the street market and everything. But it's just wiped out by Mamdani. And this is and I don't know that there's anything thing in Brooklyn. I mean, Brooklyn has Crown Heights, which is mostly Jewish. And this is completely ignored. This is just pretty much non-white neighborhoods. Ukraine, okay, probably there's Ukraine in there. But he just wipes out Little Italy.
Well, it's a bit like it must probably just like to wipe out Israel. Maybe there's a reflection in the mental health or how he actually views things. Yeah. And let's not forget where his wife has been in recently. I think is it Corsica and some retreat, and talking about Jesus as a Palestinian and all this kind of thing. Well, that just sums up where they're at.
So I think we need to probably wrap this up. We didn't even begin to scratch the surface on everything I wanted to talk about today. I appreciate everybody. So now everybody, you can leave. You can go take your headache medication. Get some coffee. Try to take a nap. Try to recharge. Go outside where it's, at least here, it's very hot and humid. It's like living in Florida all of a sudden. But I do appreciate you taking the time. I do have a number of programs that will be coming out. I don't know if they've been released yet. I did a program with Olivier Melnick the other day. I also did a program with Olivier Melnick, David Tao, and Rob Schwartz on Friday. I don't know if that's been released yet or not. And there was another one I did. I don't remember who it was. And then tomorrow night at 6 p.m., I'll be on Vendog Radio on YouTube and elsewhere. You can watch that. We'll talk more about these subjects. So everybody, I do appreciate it. Mark, I'll say goodbye to you on the side. Everybody, sorry we didn't get any questions. And what I thought might be 30-minute update extended to 2 hours. I don't care. So anyway, thanks for listening, Mark. I'll talk to you later, everybody. Thanks for listening. Again, please like, share, and subscribe. It does help us with the algorithms. And I will repost this later. And I might include a couple of the videos at the end if I remember to do that. Anyway, thank you, Mark. I'll say goodbye to you in just a minute.